Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Great Awakening Generator. I am Rose McNair, and today we are returning with Dr. Darag Speaks. How are you, Darag?
I'm really good. we, we've
Yeah,
often got sunny days when we talk.
yeah, true. We do have
Looking
sunny days.
outside.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day today as well.
Yeah.
And how look, I know you told me about some things that happened over your recess time. I call it recess. I'm trying not to use the word break. Recess time, because we had this recess over the Mercury retrograde. How did you find it? Because you were having some fun, and I'll use the word traipsing around the country. So
Yeah. Well, I did go skiing a couple of times, and
yes,
partly that's because we're just trying to get some mileage out of our life membership passes. That with the Rupehu Alpine Lifts company going down, and we may not have that next year.
yes,
And we haven't been skiing for the last 3 years because of lockdowns and that Tongan eruption last year. So
yeah.
just couldn't coordinate times. So I had some skiing done, and then we broke down on top of Whakapapa. So we spent a night up there in a howling gale.
Wow. So you
Camper
stayed
van
up
rock.
there then. You ended up staying there.
Yeah, we couldn't move the camper van, and so
Oh,
we stayed there
wow.
for 2 nights, and until we could get lifted out of there. And
Oh my gosh.
it was terrible weather for skiing, but
Yeah.
it's always good to be up on top of the mountain. It's nothing quite like it.
Yeah. How did you feel being stuck up there with the wind gusting like that?
Well, overnight it was a bit horrendous because we've had the experience of being in a camper van in Croatia,
Okay.
um, and they have a particular wind there. It's something like 180 miles an hour. It comes down from the valleys, and
Oh,
when you see it, it lifts off the ocean. The top of the ocean surface just gets lifted off and blown horizontally across the top of the water,
right.
and it's a phenomenal wind. And we actually had a skylight completely ripped off.
Okay.
Luckily, it
Wow.
wasn't raining; it was just wind.
Yeah.
Whereas, up at the top of the mountain, I thought we were just worried about our skylights because they're rattling away,
Wow.
and it's raining, and the truck's moving, and you're only like a foot away from the metal shell that's got all this rain on it. So it was a wakeful night, but we
I'm
survived.
sure.
It was
Did
good.
you pray a lot at this in this experience? What was your mechanism to stay calm?
Well, I chant. But
Okay.
at the same time, I like we talked about on the fear series, or the emotional series, is that you just have to witness your emotions and realize that this too shall pass.
Yes.
And don't let yourself get led by the like with a bull with a ring through its nose by your emotions.
Yeah.
To get some witnessing state going on, and that's that's the simplest thing.
I think you're right. So you really had to put your money where your mouth was, or
Well, we
your
always
mouth
do,
is
don't
in
we?
terms of fear, right?
Every moment in life it has that possibility
Yeah.
of need.
Yeah. It just has it at different levels, depending on the circumstances, and that was the circumstance.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow. 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 Well, I'm glad that you're safe and your family's safe and you're back because, even that is relative and relevant for the walk of life, isn't it?
it is. And how
Yeah.
about you? How about you and your break?
Well,
Is
I
it fun?
I had some fun. I had some fun and I really went inward. My thing was about going inward. I just felt the Mercury process, Mercury retrograde. And I know I make a big deal about Mercury retrograde, but it's a big deal for me because I have a lot of shifts in that process. But this one was probably one of the best ones I had. And I just really had to go inward and find myself again. And I sort of feel like I'm back on track through the Mercury retrograde because I suddenly found what it is that I needed to do for my health
Yeah,
because I was saying
yeah,
about my health. And I was reminded by my intuition that the last time I was in that state, I did Kundalini yoga and it brought me back.
yeah, yeah.
I have to say the days were difficult in terms of the pain and the movement and all of that there. And I'm on my way back. So I'm not at this point, I can't say that I'm back to having complete state of mobility. But I also realized that it took me a long time to get there. So it's probably going to take me not as long as I got there, but it's going to take a few months and I'll be back. And I'm already feeling quite energized. And so that was great for me, you know,
Yeah.
just having that knowledge. I did a lot of light language on the light language channel and shared it on the Great Awakening Generator. I was guided to do that because I don't know why we needed it, but we needed it to go through the process. And some comments I've had say to me that was okay, that was the right thing to do. It was right because it reached people. So yeah, that was my Mercury
Good.
retrograde recess process.
Well, I imagine, you know, speaking in that light language requires you to touch a level within that cleans you out as well as just
Exactly.
that process is there.
Yeah, exactly. So as
Yeah.
much as I did it for the channels and for people, I was doing it for myself. And sometimes the energies were the energy was so vast. It was so huge. I did one on Friday last week. It was weird because I'd done a couple of personal meditations in the morning, and then I did the recording. And I was on a totally different wavelength. I couldn't get my words out too. You know, some of the words were mixing, the English words were mixing with the light language. And
Yeah.
it was, and this was interesting because we did a light language with the blue gold dragons of Mercury. And I thought, but it was so relative because those dragons help us with our communications. They help us with how the words come out. And there I was mixing the words with the language, right? And they actually we invoke those dragons to clear all our technology now, like, you know, to clear the lines of communication, to unblock, to raise the frequency to higher frequency rather than, you know, EMFs and all of that we're going through, to basically clear all of that and raise it to higher frequency where it's beneficial, not you know, harmful. But anyway, here we are. And then I did radio on Friday and I was on a roll, I tell you that. I don't know what happened, but it was awesome. I had a couple of calls from people saying, Rose, we're just loving it today. You're so giggly.
That's great.
So really good. But anyway, we digress. Today's topic, I know we talk about stuff like we were talking about fear, we're talking about emotions and things like that. But today we decided that we will talk about the hot topic at the moment, which is, well, the hot topic is that we are going into our election process. We are in our election process, our national, or what do you call them? Yeah, national elections, I'm calling them, where we start to vote for a government for the future or for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about that. That's right, coming up for 3 weeks.
3 weeks ago, yeah.
So please tell me, what are we calling this one today, Darag?
Why don't we call it majoring on the minors?
Majoring on the minors. I love it.
Yeah.
Right, we're calling majoring on the minors. Explain what you mean.
Well, you know, there's that statement, you know, don't major on the minors, because that, you know, that's whole thing. If you've got some issues in life, focus on the big issues, not the little ones. So that's a statement that we've known forever, well, as long as I've been alive.
Yeah, they always say, don't sweat the small stuff.
Yes, don't sweat the small stuff. Yep. Yes, it's a good way to say it. And here we have major parties and minor parties, and it's often put out as a battle between the majors. But the major parties and the way I see them, they're both very similar. They're both owned by the globalists, as far as I can tell. They both speak from the same playbook, just slightly different flavors of it to make you feel like you've got a choice. And they're just focusing on minor issues. So the majors are focusing on the minor issues. So we need to major on the minors this year, meaning focus on the minors, because the minors are actually focusing on the major issues.
Yes.
And that's the WHO and the UN and everything else, the climate issue and all those lies we've been told that we've spoken about in other talks is what the minors are focusing on.
Yes.
And so that's where we need to go. And did you have any questions? You had some specific
Yes, I had some questions because what I really loved about the things I listened to this week, I was watching it on odyssey.com and listening at the same time when I couldn't look at the screen. I was listening to RCR, or Reality Check Radio, and there were a few people being interviewed there. I think there was one with Peter Williams talking to somebody and explaining things like, what is MMP? What is, you know, what do you do? What is a wasted vote? All of those things. And so I kind of got a bit confused because I watched another video that was put out by Claire Deeks and I can't remember his name now. The young
Tane.
presenter. Yes, that's the one, Tane.
Yeah.
And they had another person talking to them, maybe Dean something. And
Dean Harris, he created the Voters United platform.
Okay. Now, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit green about names and everything that's happening. There's just so much information that I sometimes can't cope with all the information coming through. You know, my Voice is for Freedom,
Yeah. Oh, good.
Telegram,
No.
whatever. So I don't remember names, but they were explaining something about, like, what I liked was they were not saying which party to vote for, because we can't tell people who to vote for, because we know that even right now we're not saying, we're just highlighting what is happening, because obviously the two main parties get enough platform to talk about what they're talking about. But we've got a few minor parties that have come up now, right? More than the last election, I think. The last election, I only remember a couple of them. But when it comes,
I voted for a couple of them last time.
Me too, actually. Me too. But yeah, we've learned, haven't we?
We have.
We've learned. So they were talking about minority parties. Like, if you vote for a minority party and they don't get enough seats to be in parliament, then it's like, don't vote for a minority party if that was going to be. Just check the statistics before you go and cast your vote. What is your thought on it? I mean, like, it's not a wasted vote, obviously.
Yeah. My thought, well, it was interesting because I've just finished, I did a Substack yesterday because a lady called Samantha Edwards, who does some pieces, bringing things to light that should be brought to light. And because VFF did that one I think you're talking about was Politics 101. It was a webinar they did not so long ago.
Yes, that's right.
And they were trying to explain the whole voting process, and people were quite confused with the whole idea of wasting a vote. And Samantha actually focused on the thought that they were telling people, like that she was saying that that because of what Cam Slater was saying, because he's one of the RCR, political commentators, and Reality Check Radio, Claire Deek said, was created to give minor parties a voice, because her experience sitting for a minor party last year, well, not last year, but last election, was that even though they were a minor party, they got more of a voice because Jamie Lee Ross was part of their party, the Advance Party.
Yes.
And so given he was already a sitting MP at that point, they could have more of a voice. And what she saw was that none of the minor parties got any any serious major media or mainstream media voice. No, so Reality Check Radio was created partly to give them a voice.
Yeah.
And so that's what RCR was doing. And so in the Politics 101, you've got different opinions. Like Cam Slater is saying it's a wasted vote if you vote for a minor party, and you should vote for someone who's definitely going to be not Labour or Greens, and should be something like National Act or New Zealand First. And because he was saying there's no point voting for anything else. But on the other side of the coin, Rodney Hyde said that, well, there's no such thing as a wasted vote. Because basically, and I'll just describe something with what Peter Williams said, because Peter Williams basically outlined the maths. And he said that because people think that if they vote for a minor party and that party doesn't get 5% of the vote altogether on a party vote, then their vote goes to another party. Well, their vote actually doesn't go to another party. Their votes actually get thrown away. So their votes get thrown away. So all the seats, there's 48 seats in Parliament that are kept for list candidates. So that means that if whatever percentage of the party vote a party gets, those list candidates will get into Parliament through that part of the vote.
Okay. So
there's the electorate candidates. So it's if an electorate wins, if whatever candidate wins in a specific electorate, that candidate gets in.
Okay.
And so then through the party vote, you can have another candidate in a minor party who also gets into Parliament, but through the party votes.
Yes. Okay.
So you can have two candidates from the same electorate, both in Parliament.
Okay.
Two things. And so what happens when the last election, there was I think it's about 7% of the vote. Don't quote me on the maths, but I think it was 7% on the vote, or the figures, I mean. So 7% of the vote didn't get their parties across the 5%
Yes.
threshold.
Yes.
So essentially, those 7% are not counted at all.
Yes.
So it means, what it meant, like last time, was Labor got 50% of the total people that voted. But when you throw away 7% of them, Labor, I think, ended up getting 54%.
Yes. Yes.
And so that 54% of the 48 seats gave them extra seats.
Right. Okay.
So,
that makes perfect sense, because what we're saying then is that when the minor party doesn't get in, it's not a wasted vote. It just changes how much of it reduces the percentage from 100 to how many parties actually got in. That's right. Yeah, that percentage that we get out of that.
You basically, reduces the percentage that is, like, say you go from 100% of the votes down to 93%, which is taking the 7% off.
Yes.
Then if they had 50% of 100, then that means 54% of
93.
93.
Yes.
And then that means 54% of the 48 seats compared to 50% of 48 seats.
Yes.
So that's how the maths work.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I really like. Sorry, where are you going?
Go on. No, go on. Say what you.
I really like Rodney's idea that there is no such thing as a wasted vote, and he compared it to a first past the post system. So you've got two candidates, or however many candidates you've got, and your candidate didn't get in.
Yes.
So does that mean to say you wasted your vote? That's the question that Rodney brings up. And for me, it also comes down to that whole thing of a lot of people, where it comes down to using our emotions, a lot of people are afraid that if someone like New Zealand First doesn't get in, because they're the only one at the moment, minor party that's actually saying some kind of things of what people who are conscious of what's going on want to see happen. And so rather than there's this fear at the moment, God, if I don't vote for him, then nothing will get done.
Yes.
And so it's really about learning to be conscious of that and say, well, do I want to make my vote out of fear, or do I want to make it out of love? And that's that's the way I've come down to it anyway.
Yeah. I come back to this, like what Rodney Hyde was saying, that there's no such thing as a wasted vote, right? Because I feel like if you base it on the fact that you are stating your thoughts and your feeling, you're exercising your right to choose, and saying, well, okay, I vote for that person. I feel that it does reflect something of the state of the people, because even if that party doesn't get in, but is it not something, the statistic that will be looked at and said, well, you know what, with the major parties, that I lost it to somebody who's a minor party. What have I done to do that? You know, you think, right? So I think every vote counts, and that's important. Whomever it is that whichever party you vote for, it's saying, well, and a lot of people vote like that, saying, well, I'm actually voting for this party because I truly believe that they should come in, because I resonate with their belief systems and with their beliefs and things like that. And I'm not going to support somebody, another party who might be, I don't know, not talking the talk and walking the walk kind of thing. When you support one party and not the other, you're saying, I don't support that other party. That's the other side of the coin, right? I'm supporting this person because I don't support that one. So that was an interesting conversation that they were having, and I was suddenly confused about it, and I thought, no, but wait a minute, I already think it's great that we have so many minor parties that have come up, because it's saying, if anything, it gives a reflection of how people have evolved and how people have changed, how many new ones have come up, right? My question is, and no one has ever been able to explain this to me clearly, for my understanding. Remember, I wasn't born in New Zealand, so I don't know, MMP has not been part of my psyche even as a teenager, because I was not here as a teenager when I
Right.
was,
Yeah.
all of that. So I want to say this though, before I ask the question about MMP. So what is MMP is my question, but and if you can answer that for us, that would be great. But I want to say this. Sometimes when we're speaking, like some of the conversations that I had are so technical that the ordinary person, or they're so back to front, sometimes I think we get lost in the lingo. And I don't mean you and I mean like watching those videos. It kind of confused me. And I was saying, I wish they could simplify it for us, like just be clear. So I that's where I stand with why I lack understanding about these things, because even when I'm trying to find out, I'm getting all those technical terms that I don't quite understand. So tell us about MMP, and for people like me and maybe other people watching, what is that?
Let's hope I understand. Well, MMP stands for Mixed Member Proportional Representation. And, I was come out in 96 or something. So I really don't remember what it was like before, but I assume what happened before was that it was just each electorate had a first past the post, voting process. So whoever was, led the election in that, or led the candidacy, run in that electorate would just get in.
Okay.
And in that way, it's hard for a real minor party to get a decent chunk of the vote in a particular electorate, because most people are voting for left or right, if you want a national,
Yes.
red or blue, that kind of thing. So then they realized that there was a lot of people getting votes who just were not counted at all. So then I think they separated off. That's where they split. I think they added more seats at that point, because if we only had, I think we only had 70 electorates, and then we went up to 72, and there's some Maori seats, and so all of that makes a difference. And so that I assume they expanded Parliament, but I don't know, because I honestly didn't pay a lot of attention to it at the time.
Yes.
But nowadays, with the mixed member proportional, you get any party, and they've chosen a threshold of 5% of the vote.
Yes.
Give you party votes, so you get to vote twice in an election. You get to vote once for the candidate you want to win in your electorate, and you get to vote for the party that you want to see come in. And that was what was so confusing the last time, when so many people. My wife was working in a voting booth area,
yes.
And she was saying so many people voted. It was a staunch national area. So many people voted for national, but they gave Labor so they voted for the national candidate, but they gave Labor their party vote.
Oh.
And that was, I think, because people were so brain dead, I can't brain dead, but they were so bullied and brainwashed probably better, with the whole COVID thing. They didn't realize that Jacinda didn't do the right thing. They thought Jacinda was protecting them, and so they swung to give it was a COVID vote. It wasn't anything about policies. And hopefully people will wake up to that one day. But so that's where were we going with that? We're talking about.
We're just talking about MMP.
MMP. So that's the first past the post system, and so basically, I think I had a track I was going down on that, but I can't quite remember it. But okay. So with MMP, so 5% of the vote, the party votes go to. So you're going to, as long as the party goes over 5%, then they can get up to 7 candidates in.
Okay, so they will have a seat in Parliament up to 5%, right?
Yeah.
Or 5% and over, so they'll have a seat in Parliament.
Yeah.
So you said 7 seats. What does that mean?
I'm pretty sure it's 7 seats. So if you get 5%, you're guaranteed a certain number of seats if you get over 5%.
Okay.
ACT did that in the last one.
Yes. They did so well in the last one, didn't they?
New Zealand First fell out on. Were they in the last one? They were.
They were, but they didn't make it.
They didn't make the 5%. Was that what happened?
That's right. They didn't make the 5%. Yes.
Because they made it the first time, and then he chose National, and ACT didn't want to play with Winston.
Yes.
So he had no other choice but to go with Labor and Greens.
Yes.
and as he said, he was a handbrake for them. So he made 5% on the one before, but not on this one. And so when a party gets over 5%, they get a certain percentage of the seats.
Yes.
And but at the same time, you don't have to. You could get in just like an electorate candidate could win. So could get someone from a minor party getting a seat in there without anybody else from the party having a seat in there.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
And,
right.
But the idea of the 5% is you get a bigger chunk of seats.
Okay.
And,
okay.
I don't know if you know, but NZ Loyal just did a major drama the other day when they didn't tick the boxes on their paperwork correctly, and so only 3 of them were actually listed to or tick the box to say I'm a list candidate.
Okay.
So at the moment, if New Zealand Loyal gets in, then they only had 3 candidates, and one of those 3, when it was announced that they'd made that stuff up, pulled out altogether from the thing. So they now only have 2 candidates that are qualified and have ticked the right boxes to get into Parliament. So they could get 7 seats, but they can only technically now have 2.
2 because of the number of members they have, or that's going forward.
Yeah, because they didn't tick that box, and they just made a major stuff up. And Liz apologized. She did an announcement the other day. Sounds like you hadn't heard of that.
I didn't hear about that, and I'm really sorry about that, because that's
it kind of goes along with their thought that a lot of them said, I'm not a parliamentarian. I don't want to sit in Parliament. So you could say this, that God knows, and but it also means that they've achieved one of their election goals, which is to cut down the number of people in Parliament.
So I'm going to say this now, because I'm trying to be politically correct here. Pardon my pun. Okay, I'm getting annoyed with people in our country when they start to get petty about things, because I feel like this is too big for us to be petty about things.
Yeah.
Because think about people like Liz Gunn, what she's talking about. She's talking about coming back to the major issues. Yeah. She's really, really addressing major issues.
Yeah. And she's got all the major issues, like New Zealand First only has 1 or 2.
That's right. And like the thing is, Winston is always beloved, I have to say. He's the darling because of how long he has been in our country and being part of politics. And he's always ready for a comeback. I mean, give him that, right? I think he's over, Winston's over 70. He's 78, right? Yeah. And he's always got it. And I've listened to some of the interviews he'd had with Sean Plunkett earlier this year, not recently. And I really felt like, there he was saying the things. He was like right out there, just saying his thoughts. And he always seems to have done. But I just feel like, we need to be bold like that. We need to be bold like that. I'm speaking now, not like Liz Gunn is standing up there, like she's fronting at the moment, right? Coming under a lot of scrutiny and criticism and whatever, a lot of attack in that sense. But when somebody says, oh, I don't see myself in Parliament, we are being given the opportunity to go big, go wide, go for it. Stop trying to stay small and hiding. This is the point, right? If you come out and you want to stand up for something and you want to say, I support this, that's the reality check. Pardon me, I have to say that.
Yeah. So are you saying that you would rather have them say, I don't want to be in Parliament, but I'm determined I am going to be?
Yes, more like I didn't sign up for this thing, but when I signed up, I actually didn't realize how big this is. But I guess I have to go all the way. That's going all the way, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And they are willing to do that. I mean, in fact, this has pushed them now to go even further, because now that to get more people in Parliament, they actually need to win the electorate seats.
That's right. Yeah. So now what I'm saying is I'm not being contrary. I'm just saying when people say to me, oh, I'm pulling out because I didn't want to be in parliament, what were you thinking was going to happen if you were going to support it?
Yeah, some of them are going to go.
Some of them, if that's the reality check of it,
Mhm.
is that, okay, if we actually get this, I'm going to have to be in parliament. I'm going to have to stand up there and I'm
Mhm.
going to have to give up my life. And we're called to do this now, energetically, whatever's going on in our worlds, we are being called to rise up and be the thing that we never thought we could actually be.
Mm.
But then I guess if people are pulling out, then it's just as well, because what it says is they are not ready, and we must respect that they are not ready to do that. But it's rather late in the game, don't you think?
It is late in the game, but what happened in Denmark?
I don't know. What happened in Denmark?
Well, the Danish Farmers Party took over the bulk of the votes, just came out of nowhere.
Well, I'm not surprised. Thank you, God.
And they still have issues like
Yeah.
Thierry, I'm not sure, Thiewrry is his name, Baudet,
Thierry. Yeah. Yeah.
Baudet. And I think he was on, I can't remember if he was on RCR or some, I think it was possibly even RCR. And he was saying that the leader of that party, it's a woman, I believe, still believes in the climate lie. She just argues the semantics of it.
Okay.
So that's one of the problems, and that's what a problem I see with New Zealand First policy is they're still arguing the detail of the of the emissions trading scheme, rather
Yeah.
than acknowledging that CO2 is not an emission that needs to be curtailed. We need more CO2.
Yes.
It's a
Exactly.
health food for plants. It's what
Yes.
they live off.
Exactly.
It's what brings carbon into our bodies,
Exactly. Exactly.
and we are a primarily carbon-based entity.
Mm-hmm.
So and Ivor Cummins recently did a talk. He was showing the slides from the CO2 Coalition, co2coalition.org, and they've got a questionnaire there that helps show all the climate lies around CO2. And I remember Ivor saying that if they were ever going to choose something that they really shouldn't have chosen to prove something, they certainly shouldn't have chosen CO2 because everything can be refuted by
Wow.
real science.
It just goes to see, right?
He says CO2 is the worst thing they could have chosen. It's like,
Wow.
but I've got this idea they just like to bludgeon people's brains with incorrect facts, and they think that that's their whole MO, is the modus operandi is just, oh, we'll just keep telling the lie and we'll
Yeah.
tell it harder and firmer and younger and earlier, and we'll just push it through.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's kind of where they're at.
Yeah. I feel like when it comes to this, that we have a thing of, we don't go check the facts. Humans,
Yeah.
we don't, we just bought into everything. We just trusted these people to tell us stuff, and we're like, okay, yeah, they know better, they are in power, they have got the information, and all of that. We just trusted, and we've done it for we've done it for the last 1.5 centuries, haven't we?
Yeah.
Going on like that, and longer. But I mean, I can only think about the last 1.5 centuries, but I mean, like, we just kind of follow through, and just say, yeah, no, that must be right. I've got somebody, yeah, and I've got a friend who basically said to me, oh, well, I believed all the propaganda. He used the word propaganda, and that's why I think I did what they told me to do when it came to the jab. And I was like, oh, like, what?
Yeah. Well, I was at the NZDSOS conference on Saturday.
That's what I was going to ask you about, actually. Because I think something came up on my feed to say that you could sign up and watch it. You could watch it. You could sign up for it and watch it.
They released the ability to watch it online just a week before.
Yeah. So I will try and watch it, because I just couldn't do it. You could watch it live or something that was coming up, and then okay, so now they've got a recording.
And then you have got it for 31 days or something, or 30 days after. So everybody's got another month to
watch it.
To watch that.
Yeah. So tell me about that. How was it?
Well, it was really good. But the one couple of things I was going to point out was Asim said that Asim Malhotra, he's like a really well-renowned cardiologist and tutor in the UK.
Yes.
And he's been on BBC, and he was a media darling, and
Yes, he was.
media darling. He came out and actually promoted the jab before he'd actually really studied it, and it was his father's father dying of basically jab-related injury, and his dad was a super well-renowned GP, one president, I think, of the GPs Association there. And so it was after that he started to wake up to, and someone made him question. So he saw the data line up and the personal stories and the questions, and he dug in and found that no one should be getting these mRNA vaccines.
Yes.
And since he came out with that, no one wants him on air. But he said, going back to your point of where people, they don't mention any facts. They just don't mention any figures. They just say what they believe. And so he said most of us, I mean, he knows some top people, and he says most of them get their medical information from BBC.
Wow.
Yeah. That was like jaw-dropping.
That is jaw-dropping. I mean, gosh, it's medical information.
I know. And today in Guy, I was listening to RCR Live with Paul Brennan this morning, and he had a few good people on there, and one of them was Guy Hatchard.
Yes.
And they were talking about the announcement that was made, I think, by the health minister. I think, is it a woman? I can't remember her name. And Shane Retty. And she basically came out and said that we were doing really well. We had the lowest death rate of any country in the world, or OECD or whatever it was, last year. And Guy just pulled that apart. So basically they say a statement, but they do not specifically identify a fact, and we can go read the research and the data that says, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And as Guy lays out, we had a zero, like the death rate, like a zero, it's about excess deaths. So we have an average deaths that we expect, from one year to year to year. And so in 2020, when everyone was locked down, there was zero excess deaths. And then a little more, I think, when we stopped locking down. But the key point of change happened when the vaccine came in. All of a sudden, we get more excess deaths. And he can actually point to that. He can actually go through the World Data Bank figures and say, look, this is when the vaccine came in, and this is when the excess deaths started to happen.
Yes.
And they can't point to that,
no.
But they can continue to tell lies. And Edward Dowd, most people probably heard of him. He's he used to work with BlackRock, and he's like a risk analyzer. He's
yes, I've heard of him. Yep.
And he said that a liar will lie to the bitter end. So we can't expect truth from these people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we need to continually promote the facts. And where we get them, not just our opinion, but this is what the facts say.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is where you read it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, always have a reference point for where what we're saying.
Yeah,
wow.
So those people are lying. And given they're lying in that position, they really shouldn't be there.
No. And the thing is, they're lying publicly to the public.
Yeah.
And you just cannot follow anything dogmatically without checking, hey, that person is saying that. What's it based on? Where's the facts?
Wasn't life good when we thought we could?
I mean, I've just come to this point in my life where I know that I question everything now. You probably heard me say this before.
Mm-hmm.
I question everything. I also, I feel like everything I used to believe, I cannot fall back on that belief system anymore.
Yeah.
Because I need to figure out, okay, I believe that. Where did it come from? And how do I navigate? Do I still carry on with that belief system going forward? Yeah. It's not an easy time to be. It's a great time to be alive, but it's also not an easy time. And if we want to, put the covers over ourselves and just say, you know what, I'm just going to wish for life to be like the way it used to be and carry on and all of that, and I don't really want to listen to all this, then I guess that's the soul contract we signed up for.
Yeah,
But you know, anybody who's going through life right now, if you're in the world, if you're not questioning something, at least one thing in a day, then, you know, we obviously don't have the same contract.
yeah, no. Life is not going back to where it used to be.
It's never,
Yeah,
because a lot of people tried to go back to life after, before 2020. And you know what?
yeah,
Never. It's never
yeah,
going to go back to that. And we are on this trajectory. We are on this journey. And in many ways, we have been awakened to the journey now, because it's from here on. And how do we navigate it? That's the most important thing.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah. And I think
yeah.
for us, especially, we need to really think about anybody who's going to vote. Firstly, I encourage everybody who can vote to vote,
Mm-hmm.
have your say. But if you're going to vote, be educated about how you go into that booth and what you tick the box, which box you tick and what you do, because if it's not correct, if it's
Mm-hmm.
incorrect, then it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be a wasted vote. And what a shame to exercise your right to vote and then actually it's a wasted vote now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we want to get our information right. And,
Yeah,
you know, think about what's truly and really in the hearts. What is it that you want for your child, for your grandchild, for your future, for yourself, for the community you live in, for our country? Because the news is not great that's coming out, you know, at the moment, right? I noticed that the front page of the Herald is really focusing on social crimes in the last week or two, right? And it's like, okay.
yeah. Yeah, and did you see that the WHO conference has been moved online? The not the WHO, sorry, the New Zealand Association, UN Association,
This is
with Ashley,
it's room. Oh,
dear,
really?
dear Sir
Oh,
Ashley, they've moved it online, and the reason they moved it online is they thought it could be too dangerous to hold it in public.
exactly,
And
exactly.
it's like the blowing up this game that, oh, we're dangerous people. There are dangerous people out there who want to protest and do nasty things to people, and we can't do this because of them.
Please,
And
when did
it's
we
built,
become this them and us? For
yeah, no,
goodness sake.
it's just building this narrative that
Mm.
you know, there's danger and there's people that believe things they shouldn't be believing. You know, the
So
whole thought crime idea.
yeah, the interesting thing is there are a lot of people, ordinary people, that still believe what came out in the mainstream about the protest in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, for me, when people start talking about it and talking about people, how bad they are, and I just say, you know what, I don't want to have this conversation with you, because if you believe that, I know differently.
Mm.
So I'm not having that conversation. So wow, I wondered about what was going to happen with that, because it's
Yeah,
happening
yeah.
this week, isn't it? Was it happening on
Yeah,
the
I think so.
20?
The
Yeah,
protest is still going on. It's a bit exactly the same as Posey Parker, you know,
Kelly J.
yeah, Kelly Jane, and you know, she's not coming because she can't believe the police will protect her.
Yeah, and she was meant
You
to
know,
come back
she was
actually,
meant to come back, and
and
that's actually it's
she's
actually happening
cancelled it.
tomorrow. She's cancelled her trip, so she's
Oh
not
wow.
coming. But the event is still going on, so that's tomorrow in Auckland Domain. Um, I think it's in the Domain, and so the organisers are still putting it on,
Okay.
and
Okay.
the police have offered more support, and it'll just be interesting to see. But it's that same thing that uh, the people that are wanting to help people wake up, they're not actually creating violence. So there's no reason for the UN one to be stopped.
That's right.
Um, and given that Kelly Ray isn't coming now, maybe there's less of a focus for people to go because they haven't got someone specific to go throw things at. So maybe that'll be more peaceful from the protesters. There's the protesters that are on the side of the globalists. I see the way the globalists have basically indoctrinated people,
Yeah,
whether it's
people get paid
gender
to
or
do it.
climate or
Yeah.
yeah, maybe. But I think, you know, people have been indoctrinated, and if they've this is what I was talking about in my book, is that we have been we've been emotionally manipulated.
Yeah.
So there are people that are easy to manipulate through fear and guilt. So they've used that, don't wear a mask, otherwise you'll kill granny. And don't drive a car because you're killing all of us. That's fear and guilt.
Yeah.
Whereas the other ones, the whole thing about the indigenous rights from the UN and stuff like that, the transgender rights and all that stuff, that drives people they use that to drive people who are willing to get angry, who develop grievances. So they get people angry on one side and they get people afraid and guilty on the other, and they just manipulate like crazy. And we need to start to be aware of how our emotions are used like that.
Yes, because what I discovered in this last 18 months, and I'm very naive about this, that when a protest happens, there's not just the people and the police. There's not just the one side and the other side, where the police are probably just making sure that law and order is being, that peace is being maintained and all of that. And it's not Parliament only, in the members of Parliament or government, wherever they are, where the protest is, right? These dynamics within the crowd, everybody there has got their own agenda. There would be that majority of the crowd that's probably saying we are protesting in peace because we're saying we're not going to take this policy or whatever, right? Whatever they're protesting. But there are people that come in there with other things. And in this last year or so, I've heard that people actually get paid to go and do the counter the protest. And when you think about Black Lives Matter, there was a lot of that happening with Black Lives Matter. And, Candace Owens did that documentary where they couldn't actually talk to the founder of it, or whoever this person is, to say what happened to that money, because it never went, the money that was collected, for example, never went to where it should have gone to. And so I know somebody who basically was told by a protester that they were going to, all right, I've got to go to work now. I'm going to go and do the protesting and cause disruption. And so I don't know. I'm quite naive, but it's the first time in my life that I ever heard that this was such a thing, because I never think that there could be so much disruption that is organized disruption within the protest. And it doesn't have anything to do with the actual protesters that are standing there and saying, we're not going to take this policy, for example.
Yeah. I think it's more of a create more of an us and them divide. So you basically, people are protesting, and then all of a sudden there are people protesting about the protest. And Antifa are big on that. And
that's right. Yes.
And Black Lives Matter, I have heard that George Soros maybe have funded some of them. And there's also undercover agents. Intelligence agencies want to drive that.
Yes. And no, I don't know if we can even talk about some of the undercover stuff that happened in the last protest, that protest of Wellington. I don't know if we could ever talk about some of the undercover stuff that happened there, because it's like, wow.
Yeah, well,
I was astounded.
Those guys going into that tent and then with masks over their face, and no protester had a mask over their face.
No.
They're all peace, love, and light, and let's breathe freely. And so they go and masked up into this tent, come out of it, and then 2 minutes later that tent blows up, burns, and then that fire started. So who were they?
Which one of the protesters that were there for the real reason go and blow up one of their own tents?
No, they wouldn't.
No, they wouldn't, right?
Yeah.
And also, the law keepers, question mark on them too. And I don't say the actual word, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So we're living in a very diverse world. We always to be naive now is a thing that is no longer a thing.
Yeah. No.
To say, oh, it's not my business is no longer a thing.
No, that's that we need to. You mentioned about the idea of not voting, and that was one of the ideas shared on Politics 101, the VFF one. Yes. As well, you could also, a lot of people aren't voting because they're not voting with the point of shit. Because if you do put anything on that ballot paper, you're saying you want to be part of the system. Even if it's saying no confidence, you're still using that system. So the whole idea of not voting is that you pull your support away from the system. And the question mark I have on that is, if enough people do that, then so what? There's no plan to move forward. And
Exactly.
so that's where I think we need to use the system to get beyond the system and create and recreate it. And so that's where voting becomes really important, and where, and you mentioned the whole naivety, gullibility thing. We can't afford that any longer.
No,
And
no, no.
many of us have woken up to that in our own lives, and that's what people need to face. Is it's not a healthy emotion.
No, it's not a healthy emotion. And also, one of the things I started to have a vision of recently, what if, and I think I was listening to, was it Liz Gunn that was talking about something that I listened to? And I started to see, and this is just, there was a question that came up about what if we could have somebody who, we could have a government that was awakened, to reality, that really came in there and had the heart and soul of the people at, first, rather than self, rather than following somebody else's agenda. What if we could become that New Zealand that is this small country, but amazingly powerful, and people united together, people serving people in the same, in that vein? What if light and love could be this platform we operate from? Because that's an age of Aquarius thing, isn't it? So you could just have because that's what we're supposed to do. And we need to vote. We need to have people like us who are thinking, we want things for the greater good of ourselves, but also for the greater good of humanity. We could have that. That's what we're building at the moment. And it's like you're saying, you're talking about Denmark and the party, the farmers that won the majority of the votes or whatever, right? Yeah, we're not clued up. We didn't go to university. We didn't go to law school, some of us, but we can make life from that platform, because it's okay. It's okay not to have all that facts. It's not, or that knowledge, because look at what that kind of regulation has done to our world. Do we need more of it? We need this innocence of people to be standing up there and being part of it, and taking the stand and saying, all right, I don't know what it's like to be in parliament, but you know what? I'm going to give this a go, because I can do it. And I don't have to be eloquent in my speech. I just have to be me.
Yeah. And that's Jordan Peterson did an interview with what's his name? He's an Indian guy standing for president. He's running for president. Vera Vernick sorry.
So this is in Canada, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And he's basically saying, I'm not going to have any prepared speeches. I'm not going to have a scriptwriter. I'm just going to speak from the heart.
There you go.
Liz Gunn is one of those people.
Speaking from the heart.
Yeah.
Speaking from the heart. That's it. Because heart will win. This is the age of Aquarius, for goodness sake. It started, and that's the platform. Balance is what the planet needs. And it's the transition to it.
Yeah, and there's enough information out to really turn this around, because the internet's been phenomenal like that.
Yes.
Like just realizing how our money supply is controlled, and how they've basically got us by the short and curlies through the money supply.
Yep.
Their ability to produce our money out of nothing. And that's becoming more known now. And so there also means that there's the ability to have that work for humanity, not against it.
Yes.
Rather than enslaving humanity, the idea of how we create the money supply can free it. Yeah. And Liz is, Social Credit was talking about that way back, and they got hammered for that. Liz is talking about it. I mean, people have been assassinated for that, from Lincoln to Kennedy. They've all been, it's a serious thing to actually address. But until we address the ugly elephant in the room, humanity doesn't have much of a chance.
That's right. And, driving around Auckland, for example, you can see all the starting of these 15-minute things happening.
I haven't driven around Auckland for a while. What do you see?
15-minute cities is what I'm talking about. And I'm talking about what it's looking like, for example, where I live out east.
Yeah.
And these ugly buildings coming up. They're coming up, and this is my thought. I believe that all these buildings that are coming up in Auckland, you know, where they're putting up these new houses and they're all clustered, and you've got like
right, yeah,
where there was one or two houses, they're now putting
20.
11 or 12 or whatever, right? All of this is coming up, and you suddenly start to see that when they're talking about 15-minute cities, how this is actually going to be a thing.
Yeah.
You're starting to see it and you think like, oh my gosh. Like I drove up one of the streets here yesterday, and I thought all of the beginning of the street, I hadn't been there for a while, has got these houses. They're ugly. You know, even if you're going to rebuild, if you're going to build new houses, give them some character at least, you know. So these seem rather monotonous looking. It's almost like we're just going to change the picture, the view of what you can look at outside. And it's a mind thing, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Yeah.
So I feel like it's happening, and I want it to stop. I want something to happen for that plan to be scrapped.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that the elections, who wins the elections, will be will make a huge impact on that. I hope so anyway.
Yeah, I'd like to think so too. I don't know if it depends on how many people are actually awake. And you know, in other countries, they're experiencing more pain. Like the Dutch farmers were just on some serious, you know, problems, and that's like New Zealand. They're a big part of the economy. And the ULEZ thing that's happening in London, that's getting a lot of pushback. You know, people cutting down posts and doing all sorts of things, and so they're experiencing pain direct. That's something we're not really experiencing so much in New Zealand yet. So it's whether there's enough of that, and then it's like, well, maybe the next election will make a change, but then again, will there be another election?
Exactly.
I have heard Klaus Schwab saying our pollings are so good now, we don't need an election. We can just do it through the polls we do.
Wow. Wow. Mm.
And,
Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, all I can say is I think that maybe we the people will find something better than that.
Well, we will. And how long it takes, we don't know yet.
Yeah, the esoteric community seem to think it's 2032. Seem to think like, you know, you would have heard this from 2012, since that solstice of 2012, and we moved into the age of preparing and transforming to the fifth dimension, and the birthing of the age of Aquarius. We sort of started moving towards that point. And so it's a 20-year process, you know, and whilst there's Agenda 2030, there's also the esoteric community are talking about 2032. So yeah. I believe that something will happen before it gets too far. I'm hoping. And it's really about humanity waking up and the light coming down, because the more we awaken, the more the light comes down, the more the light shines on things that we didn't see before.
Yeah, and it's the willingness to be vulnerable, to be awakening.
Yeah. And we also, those of us that are awakening, must understand that there will be people that won't. And when it comes to people not doing it, that's probably got to do with the soul contract. There's nothing we can do about it, because at the end of the day, everyone has freedom of choice, we believe. Right?
Yeah. One of my failings in the past has been putting too much emotional pressure on on friends to help them wake up. And that does not work.
No, it doesn't. And the thing is, I'm just finding like I don't know about you, but I'm not having conversations with people if I don't need to. And I'm finding also, like, you know, in the past, I would have so many messages on WhatsApp from people, or I'd have Telegram friends wanting to share this, wanting to do that. No one's talking anymore. And I feel like it's because we're just kind of humanity is going through that phase of going inward, figuring it out. That in itself tells me how things have changed.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think we need to change that. And I think one of the things that NZ Loyal's got that can be a really easy talking point is that, Well, first thing is politics is in everyone's mind at the moment. So you can, the guy that drove us up in the truck with the camper van, we're passing political signs on the side of the road. So it's easy to bring up that conversation. Oh, so who are you thinking of voting for this year? And so you can enter the conversation a lot easier because there's a current topic.
Yeah.
And then I think one of the NZ Loyal's one that really intrigues people the most is the 1% tax, the financial transaction tax. And I said, have you heard of NZ Loyal and their 1% financial transaction tax? He said, what's that?
Wow.
So then you get to explain, well, it's just a matter of what if you had no GST, no fuel tax, no income tax, the IRD had to massively reduce so it wouldn't traumatize people's lives anymore. And that there was this broad transaction tax of 1% for every financial transaction. And that means that it would spread right across the board, rather than just being on the middle class. What about that idea? And we'd have more tax take now because of the amount of transactions that 1% would bring in would give us at least double the tax take we've got now. So we'd have more money for more things.
Yeah.
So you'd have more money, and so would we. How would that be like?
Wow. What did he say?
He said, "Wow, how did that even work?" And I said, "Well, there's some information I can send you that explains it all, but that's the guts of it." And he started to think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's important to make
do.
change. It's important to make change. And, in 3 weeks' time, we will find out.
Indeed.
Oh.
Assuming there's no voter corruption in terms of the machines, because I know there's no voter corruption in terms of the actual individual electorate. The place where my wife worked last year, it's a hand done thing, but then they get passed on to a machine that does the sorting, and that's the challenge. But whether it happens or not, being out there and talking about it, bringing honesty to the table, we need to bring. Light comes with the honesty.
Yeah.
So and that's what we need to bring out, is the more we talk about it, the more light that we can bring in.
And I want to say this because I've started to realize this. As much as I'm like, oh, I don't really want to go socializing and whatever. People, we need to come out of our homes.
Oh, you do?
I know that I feel like I like being at home and reclusive and whatever, but we need to come out of our homes. We are not in any lockdown. There is no lockdown anymore, because sometime over the winter we had nights in Howick where there wasn't anybody really around. People were complaining about how quiet Howick was. And Friday night quiet in Howick, what are we talking about? That's a night where everybody, we've got quite a few pubs and restaurants and things like that. We need to change that. We need to get out there, enjoy life, and just be with the people we love. Just come together, change the energy. It's important.
That is such a good point. And it's something I noticed that the first trip when on our break, the first trip I did down was just with my daughter for a day. And she was on her way over to Turkey and Greece, where she is at the moment. And so to use her life pass, we got to use it for one more day, and we went down on the mountain. It was a beautiful bluebird day, perfect skiing day.
Yeah.
And it was like I hadn't been out like that for and just simply enjoying life, because there's always this thing on your shoulder.
Yep.
It's weight going on, and it really shifted me emotionally in terms of just saying, oh yeah, we need to remember life is about joy.
Yeah, enjoying it.
Do what we can do, or what brings us joy.
Yeah. Very important. Very important.
Absolutely.
Well, we have had some, a longer time than usual, but we haven't been on for a few weeks now. So we will hope our audience forgives us. But it was interesting conversation. Anything you want to say last before we say goodbye to everyone?
Yeah, I'd just like to repeat what I said before. It's time to major on the minors, because the majors are the minors are the only ones that are focusing on the major issues.
Yes, indeed.
The majors are focusing on minor issues, and that's not going to get us anywhere than where we are heading, according to them.
Yeah,
And the powers that shouldn't be really shouldn't be. We should be the power in the world.
that's right. That's
Mm.
right. Darag, thank you so much. It was
Thank you
good to
so
have the
much, too.
chat. And
Yeah,
I'll
it's so
catch you
lovely.
next week anyway. So yeah.
Cool.
Well, thank you everyone for watching, and we'll catch you next time here on the Great Awakening Generator. And Dr. Darag Rennie, and I'm Rose. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.